What's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing a Burning Abyss deck profile. So I'm really excited this week guys because this deck is an absolutely amazing deck that's been good ever since it was released. This deck has some absolutely amazing tech cards in it and I'm really excited to show you guys this build. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name skipped in every single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're playing 2 copies of Scar Malebranche of the Burning Abyss. This card is a great 2-of in the deck because of some tech cards that we're playing in the deck. Now, all of your Burning Abyss monsters share a common effect, that if you control a monster that is not a Burning Abyss monster, you destroy this card. And you can only use one of the following effects of every single Burning Abyss monster once per turn. Now, every Burning Abyss also shares the ability that if you control no spell or trap cards, you can special summon this card from your hand, which is a really awesome effect just to swarm the board with all sorts of Burning Abyss monsters. But every single Burning Abyss monster has a unique effect. Now, Scarm's unique effect is that during the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard, because it was sent there this turn, you can add a level 3 Dark Fiend type monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of Scarm, which is a really awesome effect that basically searches any of your Burning Abyss monsters off this card's effect. We then play 2 copies of Graph. Graph is a great 2-of as well that has a very unique effect. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon out a Burning Abyss monster from your deck, except another copy of this card, which is a great effect just to get you additional monsters on your side of the field. I then play 2 copies of Seer. Seer is a great card in the deck as well that has the ability, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target a Burning Abyss monster in your graveyard, except another copy of this card, and special summon it, which is a great combo piece for this deck, so you can go in for all sorts of amazing plays and set up your graveyard with your copies of Graph and Seer. They are absolutely amazing in this deck. And then play 2 copies of Farfa. Shoutouts to Farfa. This card is really good in this deck because it has the ability, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target a monster on the field and banish it until the end phase, which is an absolutely insane effect to deal with some really powerful monsters just to get them off the field and go in for some really good plays, and just a really good card overall. I then play a single copy of Libic. Libic is just a really good 1-of in my opinion that has the ability, if it's sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a level 3 Dark Fiend monster from your hand to your side of the field, but its effects are negated, which is a great effect actually, because if you have a Burning Abyss monster that has its effects negated, it doesn't destroy itself if you have another Burning Abyss or another non-Burning Abyss monster on the field, which is a really awesome effect. And then play a single copy of Alec. Alec is a good 1-of as well because it has the ability, if it's sent to the graveyard, you can target a face-up monster on the field and negate its effects until the end of the turn, which is a really good effect to combo with your copy of Beatrice, because you can send this card directly from your deck to the graveyard to use it as a negate, which is a really good effect. And then play a single copy of Barbar. Barbar is just a really good card to burn your opponent for 900. Because it has the ability, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target up to 3 Burning Abyss cards in your graveyard except Barbar, and then banish them. And if you do, inflict 300 points of damage to your opponent for each card, which is really good to do 900 points of damage to your opponent. We then play 2 copies of Tour Guide. Tour Guide is a really good 2-of in the deck. It has the ability, when this card is normal summon, you can special summon out a level 3 Fiend monster from your hand or deck, but its effects are negated. Also, it cannot be used as synchro material, which is not that big of a deal because we're not synchro summoning in this deck, but it's a really good card overall as a normal summon to be able to just summon this card to your field and summon out any of your Burning Abyss monsters off its effect to be able to just basically negate their effects so they don't destroy themselves, which is really good. We then play a single copy of Fiendish Rhino Warrior. Fiendish Rhino Warrior is going to be a really amazing card for this deck because it has the ability that Fiend type monsters that you control except Fiendish Rhino Warrior cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects, which is really good because it basically turns all of your Burning Abyss monsters effects off, which is really nice. It also has the ability, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can send a Fiend type monster from your deck to the graveyard, except another copy of this card, but we only play 1, so we're going to be sending any of our Burning Abyss monsters to the graveyard to get their unique effects off, which is really good. I then play 3 copies of Orbital Hydralander. I still think this card is absolutely insane in the deck. As long as we have snow in the format, I still think that this is the best way to play Burning Abyss, because Orbital Hydralander is just absolutely insane, because it has the ability, it cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned from your hand by having 5 or more monsters in your graveyard and no monsters with the same name, which is why we play so many 2-ofs in this particular build, is because we don't want to have too many duplicates in the deck that we might have a 3-of that goes to the graveyard. So this card is really, really good in the deck to be able to just summon to your side of the field with its absolutely insane once per turn effect that is also a quick effect. That has the ability at once per turn, a quick effect, you can send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard and destroy 1 card on the field, but you must have at least 2 monsters in the graveyard and no monsters with the same name in the graveyard to activate and resolve this effect. This card is just really good overall just to throw on the field once you've milled out a bunch of cards to the graveyard to help you go in for game and be a once per turn pop on the field, which is really good. I then play a single copy of Absolute King Backjack. Backjack is a good one of because we do play a lot of traps in this deck. So this card can come in extremely handy with your copy of Dante milling this card to the graveyard because it can basically set up your plays for your mills, which is really, really good to know if it's going to be safe to mill cards depending on what you excavate off this card, which is really good because it has the ability during your opponent's turn, you manage this card from the graveyard, and this is a quick effect to excavate the top card of, or the top 3 card, or top card of your deck, and if it's a normal trap, you can set it to your side of the field, otherwise send it to the graveyard. And it also has the ability, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck and then place them on top of the deck in any order, which is really good to be able to look at the top 3 so you know what you're going to mill off this card or excavate off this card and what you're going to draw during the next turn, and then what the next card is the 3rd card which you might mill off another copy of Dante. I then play a single copy of Fairy Tale Snow. Fairy Tale Snow is just absolutely broken in this deck because it helps you fix your graveyard so you can go in for your Orbital Hydrolander, and it is a quick effect which is really good because if this card is normal or special summon, you can target a face-up monster that your opponent controls and change it to face-down defense position, and then during either player's turn, if this card's in your graveyard, you can manage a total of 7 other cards from your hand, field, and or grave and special summon this card, essentially being a quick play Book of Moon, which is really insane to be able to use in this deck. This card is really, really good and a card you always want to get to the graveyard. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're just going to be playing a few spells, and we're going to be playing a single copy of Foolish Burial to get the exact card in the graveyard when we need it. 1 copy of Galaxy Cyclone, because this card is a really good card to mill to the graveyard because it basically has the ability you can banish this card from the grave and then target a face-up spell trap on the field and destroy it, which is really good in this deck, especially with how much we're milling with cards like Dante. And then 3 copies of Mass Change 2. Mass Change 2 is really good in this deck because being able to turn any of your dark monsters into a Dark Law is just really good, especially in today's format. We're having so many graveyard heavy decks. So this card is really good because you're basically, your Dark Law is a walking macrocosmos, which is absolutely insane. So it's a really good card to summon in this deck. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing a bunch of traps. We're going to start out with 2 copies of Trap Trick. Trap Trick is just really good. It basically counts as additional copies of every single trap card you play in this deck, because you can manage a normal trap from your deck except a copy of Trap Trick to set 1 card with the same name directly from your deck, which is really good, but you can only activate 1 more trap for the rest of the turn. I then play 2 copies of Fiend Griefing. Fiend Griefing is a good 2-of in the deck that lets you target a monster in your opponent's graveyard and shuffle it into the deck, and then you can send a Fiend monster from your deck to the graveyard, which is really, really good in this deck to be able to just get one of your Burning Abyss to the graveyard to get their unique effect. I then play 3 copies of Archfiend's Ghastly Glitch. This card is really good, just recently released alongside the Labyrinth deck, but this card is really good in this deck as well because if you control a Fiend type monster, you can target 1 card on the field and destroy it. Then you can send a Fiend monster from your deck to the graveyard, essentially being a Foolish Burial and a pop on the field, which is absolutely insane for Burning Abyss. I then play 3 copies of Dinomischus. Dinomischus is a banish 1, which is really good because you can target a face-up card on the field and then discard a card, and if you do, banish that card, which is really good in this deck. But the really awesome thing is if the target fizzles and leaves the field, you don't have to discard the card because you have to have a valid target to discard the card, which is absolutely insane for this deck. I then play 3 copies of Ice Dragon's Prison. Ice Dragon's Prison is just one of the best trap cards ever printed, and has a really good effect that you could target a monster that your opponent controls or in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your field, but its effects are negated. Then you don't have to, but you can banish one monster from both players' fields that have the same type as each other. You can't just use this card as a monster reborn to bring back some really powerful boss monsters that your opponent might have in their graveyard, or you can use this card to get rid of a monster on their side of the field, non-targeting, which is really, really good. I then play 3 copies of Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute is just really good to board wipe the field. It's just an overall great card in this deck to be able to just destroy all the monsters on the field. I then play 3 copies of Dimensional Barrier. I am main decking Dimensional Barrier in this deck because being able to shut down an entire type of card is just absolutely insane. And it's just a really good card overall in this deck. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Dante. Dante is just really good overall. You get to mill 3, and then it gains 500 attack points for every card that you mill off its effect, going up to 2,500, which is really, really good. This card is overall one of the coolest cards ever printed, in my opinion. It's just a really good card overall, because it also has the ability, if this card attacks, it's changed the defense position at the end of the battle phase. And if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target a Burning Abyss card in your graveyard and add that card back to your hand, except this card, which is really good in this deck, but you only play 2 copies of it because you're only ever really going in this card twice. I then play a single copy of Beatrice. Beatrice is a really good card overall, basically a walking Foolish Burial that you can make on top of Dante, which is really, really nice. I then play a single copy of Azura King. Azura King is a really good XZ monster for this deck. It's super good in this deck, really easy to summon, and is a walking negate that can attack multiple times. Then when this card has a material, it can attack a number of times each battle phase up to the number of materials attached to it. And at the start of the damage step, if this card battles, it gains 200 attack points permanently, which is really good. And when another monster effect is activated, quick effect, you can detach a material of this card to negate the activation if you just do destroy that card, which is just absolutely insane. This card is really, really good in this deck. And in any level 3 deck, it does require 3 level 3 monsters to make this card, but being able to attack all 3 times is really insane. I then play a single copy of Fortune Tune just to make Zeus. This card is really good overall in the deck to make Zeus. 2 copies of Downer Magician, Downer Magician is really good because you can use both of these to make additional copies of Zeus on your side of the field. For example, if a copy of Dante attacks, you can make this during main 2, and then you can make your copies of Zeus on your side of the field. I do play 2 copies of Zeus in my build. This card is just so good overall in the deck to be able to make this card and just board wipe the field. Your opponent never really expects the second Zeus because you can just set up, if you have to go second, make a copy of Dante, attack after you mill the 3 off of Dante, and then main 2, make downward, make Zeus, and then you're sitting on a Zeus, board wipe the field, and then set all your traps to your side of the field. So it's almost like you went first, which is really, really good because you just board wipe the field and you got to draw a card, which is absolutely insane. And you're also sitting on top of a 3,000 attack point monster. I then play a single copy of Boral Sword. I don't play Borreload Access Code in this deck because I don't play enough attributes, in my opinion, to play Access Code. So I really like Boral Sword in this deck instead because it is an OTK piece over your copy of Access Code. And this card is just really good to go in for game. I then play a single copy of Unicorn to spin stuff. IP Masquerade to make the Unicorn to spin stuff during the opponent's turn. Cherubini, which is just an absolutely insane link monster overall that you're going to summon all the time in this deck, has the ability that monsters this card point to cannot be destroyed by card effects, essentially protecting all your Burning Abyss monsters from themselves, which is really, really good. And also, if this card would be destroyed by battle or my opponent's card effect, you can send one other card you control to the graveyard instead. And also, it's a walking Foolish Burial that lets you send a level 3 monster from your deck to the graveyard, and then you get to target any Burning Abyss monster on the field, and it gains attack and defense equal to that monster's attack and defense that was sent to the graveyard by this effect until the end of this turn, which is a great effect. I then play 2 copies of Darklaw. Darklaw is just too good not to play in this deck with Mass Change 2. This card is basically a Macrocosmos, and anytime your opponent adds a card from their deck to their hand, once per turn, you can send a random card from your opponent's hand and banish it because of its effect, which is really, really good. This card is absolutely insane as a boss monster in this deck that's super easy to summon off of Mass Change 2, and being able to just stop the opponent from using the graveyard is really nice. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to play with. If you guys have never played Burning Abyss, you definitely should give this deck a try, especially this build. I really like the Orbital Hydrolander build. because you have so many options with this particular deck. Being able to make Zeus, Orbital Hydrolander, Dark Law, all sorts of really cool boss monsters in this build. So, anyways guys, that's it for this one. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can come part of our notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys!